today by Paul Ryan, Geo-science advisor for United Oil and Gas. Thanks for joining me, Paul.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks for having me.
So, Paul, perhaps you could, before we go through, the Walton Morant Jamaica license and your new technical presentation, perhaps you could just give us a little bit of a background of yourself, please.
Sure, yeah. So as I said, I'm Paul Ryan. I'm the geoscience advisor here at United. I've got about 20 years experience now in the oil and gas E&P industry. Gained that experience across African projects, projects in Europe, Middle East, and more laterally in the Caribbean. So I spent the last 7 years or so working with United Oil and Gas, primarily on the Walton Morant license area. So that's a bit of history on me. I've a master's in geology from Royal Holloway and a bachelor's from UCD here in Dublin.
Okay, great. Walter Morant then, a frontier exploration play, pretty exciting. Um, could you just give us a high level overview of what Walter Morant is actually, please?
Sure, yeah. So the license itself is a huge license. It covers more than 22,000 square kilometers off the southern coast of Jamaica. And it covers two basin areas, the Walton Basin in the west and the Morant Basin in the east. So hence the name, the Walton Morant license. Um, it is huge, as I said, and to give that a bit of context on that, I guess it's bigger than the size of Wales. So that is really just indicating a bit of the scale that we're dealing
Right.
with here. So a large license. We have been involved in the license since 2017. That's United. So we joined Tullow as a minority partner. They had the license from 2020, from 2014.
Hmm.
And then in 2020, United took over as 100% operator of the license when Tullow decided they had their interests were elsewhere. Even though they still saw a lot of technical merit in the license, and I know some from talking to some of their guys, they really enjoyed working on it and would have loved to have stayed on it, but their loss is our gain.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you put out a new technical presentation, and it gives an overview of the Walton Morant license and some of the key prospects. Perhaps we could have a little dive into that, and you could give us an overview.
Sure. Yeah, that's no problem. It's probably touched on a lot of it already in the intro, the scale of the license. But one thing that we didn't mention is that the license itself holds, to date anyway, we recognize that there's about 7 billion barrels of mean or mid-case prospective resource identified across a number of prospects and leads on the license. So that demonstrates the huge potential that we see on the license. And along with that, the Morant license has, we've really got quite favorable fiscal terms in Jamaica through the petroleum system, the petroleum sharing agreement. And
Hmm.
so that, makes from an economic and a commercial point of view, any success in Jamaica would be really quite beneficial.
Hmm.
On top of that, we have quite a highly supportive government, and it's been demonstrated through our ability to and their generosity in giving us a number of extensions in the past. And as has happened recently this year, we have a further extension to the license, which brings us up to January of 2028. So we've now got another 2.5 years on the license to carry out what we would consider to be a really cost-effective technical work program. And that entails the acquisition of piston cores and seismic reprocessing, which
Hmm.
we think will further de-risk the license to an extent that we would have a lot of confidence in having exploration success and moving forward into a drilling phase of the license, which will be the next phase.
I mean, this would be good for Jamaica, wouldn't it? I mean, it's a potentially huge resource that would bring a lot of economic benefits to Jamaica themselves, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's recognized in Jamaica as well. I think if you were to draw some parallels with the recent success that has occurred in Guyana, where they have had substantial success from an E&P point of view, and that has had an economic impact for the country as a whole.
Yeah, you mentioned Guyana there. Is there, I mean, I'm not an oil and gas expert, but are there any similarities in terms of geology to what Exxon have been drilling down there versus what the Walton Morant license, looks like?
Yeah, so in terms of the geology, I guess one thing that we could draw some parallels to is the source rock. So the age of the source rock for both Jamaica and Guyana is very similar, and that is in keeping with the general Caribbean region. So the source rock for the Caribbean region, or the main source rock, is early Upper Cretaceous age, so Cenomanian
Mm,
Turonian, and for those that would know. And this is a source rock age that's really quite significant globally, but particularly in the
mm,
Caribbean, where it is the source for the Guyana, Success, and Suriname, but also in northern Venezuela, Trinidad and Tobago, and also in Colombia. A lot of the success that's been had in those countries, where there are prolific petroleum systems, is down to the presence of a Cenomanian Turonian source rock.
mm. Yeah.
That gives us
Okay.
confidence. We've been able to identify similarly aged source rock in Jamaica, and we think that it has regional significance. So that gives us confidence that we have what we need in terms of the source rock in Jamaica.
So, okay, yeah. So, I mean, I understand you've got a number of targets on the Walter Morant license. It's not sort of like a one-trick pony. There are some quite interesting targets, and I think some of them are, ones that you would be looking to target, before others. Yeah, can you give us a little bit of an overview about those?
Sure. Yeah. So, in terms of, I guess probably to step back one step further before going into
Yeah.
the targets that, or the potential prospects and leads that we see. I think there's a number of elements that we'd like to see in place in order to give us confidence, and those are listed here. So we need a source rock, and so it's a rock that will generate oil from, and that has to be sufficiently buried in order to have generation and migration. We also need to have then a reservoir, which is a rock that has enough void space to hold oil or gas in it, and a seal which doesn't have that void space, which stops the oil or gas from continuing to migrate past the reservoir. And finally, you'd need a trap. And then we have identified a lot of prospects and leads with all of those elements present. So that gives us confidence that we would have success. In terms of the prospects and leads that we have identified, I skipped through a number of slides here,
Hmm.
um, and I'll just bring up a slide which shows
While you're doing
the
that, didn't I hear something? Didn't I see something that fishermen had discovered oil seeps coming out of the ground?
yeah, well, yeah, that was interesting actually. I think it was during one of the seismic acquisition programs back in, I think it was 2016,
Hmm.
when Tulla were the operator. They were conducting a seismic acquisition program in the eastern part of the license. So you can see it on this map here, where the
Hmm.
lines are shown in blue.
Hmm.
And they were approached by some fishermen who were curious about what was actually going on. And the guys on the boat told them that we're here for an oil and gas exploration company, shooting seismic. And they said, well, if you're looking for oil, we can point some out to you over here. So that piqued some interest and curiosity. So the seismic vessel sent an ancillary vessel, so a smaller boat, with the fishermen to an area which is just to the east of a shallow water platform, which is called Pedro Bank. And it's probably quite small on this scale, but it's around about here. And lo and behold, there were some slicks in the water.
Hmm.
And so those slicks were sampled. So some seawater was taken, and some of the slick, the sheen was taken with it, and some analysis was done. And yeah, that showed that that was actually a verified oil seep, thermally derived oil seep. So
Okay.
not just some diesel from a passing boat, but actually coming
Yeah.
from the surface.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So So in terms of the prospectivity we see, I mean, there's a lot of prospects and leads that have been identified. So more than 40 to date. Of those, there are a number that I think it's 21 that have a mean or mid case volumetric size of 100 million barrels or more. And that's interesting because from our economic analysis, 100 million barrels or more would be economically viable as a standalone development. So we have 21 of these in terms of prospects and leads. So a lot of potential identified. On that table, you can see a number that have been highlighted in blue, and these are ones that we've high graded or matured a bit further than the others. So there's a varying level of degree of maturity across the prospect and lead portfolio. I guess chief amongst them is the Colibri prospect, which has been, we spent a lot of time maturing that because it's covered by 3D seismic. So a lot of good quality data, which will give us information about what we see. And I guess if I move on to the next slide,
And
that shows.
just to mention there, would so Colibri itself would obviously you've got potential partners in the data room under NDA. Would you is Colibri in your collective discussions with some of those potential partners, is Colibri sort of like the if you like the first target you'd be looking at?
Yeah, so Colibri is the most mature at the moment. So it's the one that we have de-risked to the point that we think it's a drill-ready prospect.
Right.
The other prospects are, I mean, there's a number of them that we would still consider to be drill-ready, but probably aren't as mature. As for instance, we have our Thunderbolt lead in the Morant Basin, which is actually larger than Colibri. So it comes in at about 600 million barrels of mean prospective resource.
Right.
Degree is about 400. So both of them very substantial prospects. But I guess we've high graded Colibri because we have the benefit of 3D seismic across it, and that gives us more confidence in the trap and the size of the trap that we have. But certainly there are other prospects and leads on the license which we would still consider to be mature and ready for drilling.
Okay, thank you.
Success with one would certainly bring success, or further de-risk the rest of the portfolio to add to the success rate. Yeah. So that's so looking at Colibri itself. I mean, we all the elements of that we need for success are present and active in the Colibri location. Which gives us confidence that if we were to drill this, we would have success, and that success would lead on to other success at other prospects and leads, such as the Oriole and Streamer Tail prospects that are they're covered by 3D seismic as well. But beyond that, if we then move into the 2D seismic area, we have these substantial prospects or leads rather in the Morant Basin, which I've already mentioned Thunderbolt, but there are others. There's Moonraker and Moneypenny, which are still substantially large prospects and leads that could, in a success case, really have huge economic benefit.
Mm.
And we don't even stop there. There are another number of less mature prospects and leads, or rather leads that have been identified as well. For instance, there are some Colibri lookalike structures that, based on 2D seismic, you probably wouldn't drill, but given the benefit of 3D seismic, which we now have over Colibri, that same 3D benefit could be applied to other leads on the license and identified further prospects.
And I guess it's just about, I guess it's a case of obviously you have limited resources to do too much on too many things. So you've honed in on the likes of Colibri and what have you, where you've sort of de-risked further to make that sort of like a primary target, so to speak.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yep.
So all the data that we have, and there is a substantial amount of data. I think it's $40 million that have already been spent on the license to date. So even though we're talking about a frontier license here, having that much data acquired and that much money spent on the license really gives us confidence that what we can see on the data is real and makes us gives us a strong level of confidence that we will have exploration success here.
Yeah. So you mentioned de-risking there, Paul. What does that actually mean? What's been done today? I think you said earlier that Tullow Oil had previously held the license, and did they put significant spend into the project, and is that something United have essentially benefited from?
Yeah, that's right. As I mentioned, so Tullow had the license from 2014, and from 2014 to 2017, when United came on the license, they had acquired two 2D seismic acquisition programs, which went a long way to identifying some of the prospectivity, but really focusing the attention on certain areas of the license, which looked like it had most of the prospectivity in it. So on the basis of that, and post United farming in 2017, a 3D seismic survey was undertaken in 2018, and that really focused in on Colibri and a number of the other prospects and leads, so streamer tail, Oriole, etc.
Mm.
And that 3D seismic made a huge difference in terms of de-risking the prospectivity seen. So, and that's why, as I mentioned, Colibri will be considered the most mature prospect because we have the benefit of the 3D data across it.
Mm. Okay. So tell us about the data room then. Obviously you have, I think you've reported you have multiple parties in the data room. What actually happens in the data room? And what happens sort of post NDA, if you like? Is it a case of there's a number of parties looking at data, and do you have active discussions, and how does it actually work?
Yeah. So what we do is when a company comes in, and as you're right, we do have multiple companies under NDA at the moment, at varying scale from the majors down to just smaller independent oil companies. But this process is similar for all companies. So once an NDA is signed, we will then provide that company with a far more detailed management presentation, which would go into a lot of the nuts and bolts as to why we feel the geology is telling us that the prospectivity is there based on all the evidence that we see. So we run through that. We give an overview of the economic commercial terms. And then after that, we would give the company access to a virtual data room or a VDR, which essentially is all of the data in digital form on a server, which is then available to a company to go in and interrogate the data for themselves to make sure that what we're saying is what they would agree with, and certainly to date that has been the case. So they've had a lot of technical agreement with us, but throughout that process, if there are conversations that are needed or questions that come up that we can help with, then we are always open to communication. So it's a matter of reaching out whenever there is something that needs to be answered, and we'll answer it straight away.
Okay, so it sounds like it's very busy in the data room. What comes next? What can investors look out for, Paul?
In terms of what the next stage gates are, I guess, is that we'll continue to have those conversations with the interested parties in the data room who are at various stages of their technical and commercial due diligence. And any questions that come from that, we will deal with. We are continuing our technical work program as well. So the permitting process for the piston coring aspect of that work program is underway. And we will continue to work with the Jamaican authorities on that front, and also discussions with potential survey companies in order to move the project forward. And then, yeah, we I guess the main thing is we really hope to get this project farmed out, and for everybody's benefit, we want to move to a drilling stage in the next license phase and get a well drilled and really show that what we see and the evidence that we see is ground truth by a well, and we have exploration success.
Mm. Okay, Paul. Well, sounds like an exciting time for United. Thanks for joining us today and giving us that sort of high level technical overview. and look forward to chatting to United again in the future.
Yeah, thanks very much, Darren. Appreciate the time.